Paul, Minnesota, the St. Paul Neighborhood Network, and this is Speechless. We're just 3 blocks away from where, you know, it's interesting to me. I always start with this 3 blocks away, but it's interesting to me. The NRA has killed nobody. None of the NRA members have killed nobody, went out and murdered anybody. Get 0 government funding. Planned Parenthood gets approximately $500 million, if not more than that, every year. And last week in Minnesota here, approximately 260 babies were ripped apart limb for limb and killed. And why would somebody, you know, that's the dialogue of evil going on right there. And the bait and switch and the how do we blind people's eyes to the reality? And so if women's choice means that people die, humans die, life dies, how do you make that good? And you can't. Only those that support it feel good about it. But then again, they don't. Many of these mothers that have killed their babies and that have felt the pain of that and have recognized that are speaking out and saying, I was lied to in that process. But $500 million to Planned Parenthood from the U.S. government, from the taxpayers, 0 to the NRA, and the NRA is being blamed for people that aren't part of the NRA killing people. Yet you can go on TV, you can go on the internet, and you can watch the teachings of Muhammad, which teaches you to kill non-believers. And do a lot of Muslims reject that teaching? Well, no, they can't reject that teaching because it's what Muhammad said, and if you reject Muhammad's teaching, you're not a Muslim, okay? So, and if you reject Muslims' teaching and you were a Muslim, you're now an apostate. So being an unbeliever to then being a believer and then not believing, you're an apostate, you get killed either way. And that was Muhammad's teaching. And it's very clear. You can go, matter of fact, there's a good website out there called The Religion of Peace. www.thereligionofpeace.com, and all kinds of information out there. And for example, they print out every week or every day, if there's a Muslim that's killed somebody, here's where it happened, how many were killed, and as best they can report on it. We don't always have all the information. But remember, just in Minnesota, nobody was killed by this, but a 19-year-old female jihadist, I can't pronounce her name, Tanuza Hassan, was arrested for setting 8 fires in 7 buildings at St. Catherine's University. And she was doing it in the name of Muhammad, in the name of jihad. And this is a university that, if she was a student there, was reaching out to her and befriending her. And doing that, of course, in the name of Jesus. But no good deed goes unpunished. Here's what happens in the mindset of young people being trained in learning about their faith, and it particularly will happen to younger people. And I think in Minnesota, the FBI, the CIA agents have been dealing quite a bit with it. The people that get what they call radicalized. And of course, you can go to tons of videos that where Muslims, the imams are speaking, and they will say, hey, they think radical, they think what we believe is radical, but we know it's normal. And they say it, okay? It's just out there. should get the video. And there's many of them, but I should at least get you one. And boy, that debate by the imams going on there, they're just praising this guy for saying this. Can I use that? Well, yeah, you can use that, but I'm not going to, you know, but you can't make any money off of it. I get the money, but you're free to use it, you know, as long as I get paid for it. But it was in front of a whole bunch of Muslims. They were at a men's meeting, and the women were off to the side, and the men were in the main group, you know, and he's asking the questions. How many Muslims believe in the submission of your wives? They're to submit to you. And they're all raising their hands. And he lists off a number of things we would consider radical. I mean, in their term of submission is a lot worse, is not the biblical term of submission. Their term of submission is you can beat her up if you want. And if you find reason, it's okay to beat up your wife. Especially okay to beat up a non-believer woman and even rape her. That's, Muhammad says, go ahead. They know this. Maybe you don't know it, but they know it. Now, are all Muslims out there raping women and beating up women? No, they're not. Okay, are those okay Muslims? You know, and there's this distinction here, okay? But they don't reject the teaching of Muhammad. They don't say, boy, Muslim brother, you can't do that, because they know Muhammad said it was okay, that you can do that. And there's this concept in the Muslim faith called abrogation. And that word means the later teachings of Muhammad supersede the first teachings of Muhammad. And in the first teachings of Muhammad, in the first 10 years of ministry, Muhammad had about 200 converts. And then before the Battle of Badr, Muhammad got his vision. You can have 72 virgins if you become a martyr in the name of Muhammad. If you kill in the name of Muhammad, and in that process you get killed, then you can go to war. And so now you have two factions. Well, now you've had it for a long time, but there was two factions in Islam. There's, maybe factions isn't the word. There's two houses, the house of peace and the house of war. And guess who the house of war is waging war against? Apostates, which Sunni and Shia consider each other apostates, so that's why they kill each other, and any other branch of Islam teaches that. And so then you have the House of Peace is just a Muslim who agrees with your line of descendancy of the lineage of Muhammad or not the lineage of Muhammad, and who's the head imam. So that's what all that warring is about. Each group sees each other as apostate, and Muhammad says, kill the apostate. It puts everybody in a bad predicament there. Well, I bring that up because it gets to this event that happened yesterday. It could have happened on the 12th. Yeah, on the 12th of March, but it came out in the small press. You know, people don't know about it. Maybe it hit the big press. But there was a 17-year-old Muslim boy who was at an overnight, and he was in Florida, and he stabs he stabs a friend to death, and he injured two others, and he said he did it in the name of Islam. Now, which would be in the name of Muhammad. And it's interesting, I'll read you part of the police report here. Now, police reports are not evidence. They're part of people's interpretation of the evidence. There'd have to be a jury trial and all of this. And because you'll see here, this Corey Johnson who did the stabbing, he was taken into custody, and the police Mirandized him. Okay, 17-year-old kid. Did they? I don't know. Police lie. See, that's why you got to do more than this, than a police report. I don't rely on them, but this is what it said. Post Miranda, Johnson, the man, 17-year-old, almost 18, by a couple months here to go, advised he bought a knife on Sunday, March 11th, 2018, and brought it to the residence. Johnson advised at 4 a.m. he realized that everyone in the house was asleep. At that time, Johnson made the decision to kill Elaine, Dane, and Giovanni in their sleep. In a statement, Johnson advised he stabbed the victims because of his Muslim faith. Johnson advised Giovanni was idealizing famous people and referring to them as gods, which was against the Muslim faith. And Johnson felt Dane made fun of his Muslim faith and the fact that Johnson prayed and kissed the ground. Johnson advised he watched violent videos on his phone and computers at different locations via the internet and was reading the Quran from his phone just prior to the attack to give him courage to carry out his intentions. Detectives talked to Kyle, and Kyle is one of the brothers who was at this home, not of Johnson, but the mother was stabbed too, and has severe injuries, but Kyle is one of her sons. Kyle, who advised Johnson, detectives talked with Kyle, who advised Johnson believes, so Kyle was advising the police that Johnson believes in the Muslim faith, and although Kyle, doesn't believe in the faith, the two often watch videos via the internet about Muslim jihadists. The videos are extreme and encourage death to non-believers. The videos are searched for and viewed on the computer and mobile devices. The two had watched the video March 11th, 2018 on their mobile cell phones. So they're not watching radical Muslim teachings. These are the teachings of Muhammad. It is there in the Quran. It's very easy to find out. And one place to go is that website I told you about, www.thereligionofpeace.com. Another place to do is do a Google search, what would Muhammad do? You can see some of Randall Terry's videos. You should buy his video series that teaches about the Quran and the Muslim faith, and lays it out fairly simply. It's a complicated subject and topic. There's a lot of things to know and understand, and you can't do it in an hour on the internet. You know, it's going to take 20, 40 hours just to get a cursory understanding of the Muslim faith, and this is a good start. His video is probably 20 hours long, and it's a good start to figure out, you know, what's going on. And this is why Syria will never be dealt with, because you just replace one Muslim leader with the other. You know, they're all apostates anyway, and they're going to try to control that country and the oil reserves. And if one other group comes in, right now the Iran Shiites are in control with Assad, and the Sunnis are fighting. And if it switches to the Sunni, then the Shiites will start fighting, and it just keeps going. That's just among Muslims. You know, and then there's Christians living in the midst of that get persecuted, and just go to Jihad Watch, and a pastor and his wife, Christian pastor, they were just killed 2 days ago. Now, interesting thing that under Saddam Hussein, Christians were allowed to live in relative peace. You know, they couldn't stop everybody. You can't stop everybody, you know. And this is an important point. you know, Christians commit crimes. Christians kill people. Christians rape people. Christians sexually molest people. But there's nowhere in the Bible that it says, do this. There's nowhere that Jesus teaches, go and do this. There's no example of Jesus doing that and saying, this is what you need to do. But that's exactly what the Muhammad says to do. In the Hadith, through the Sunnah, and you know, and then of course the Word of God, the Quran. But the Hadith is just as important. But Muhammad says, go and do this. And that's a big distinction. So on this website, they basically go through the last week. And the Muslims, not as a title, as a group, you know, so some of these can be Sunnis killing Shia, and some of them could be Shia killing Sunnis, but there was 39 attacks from March 3rd to March 9th. 118 were killed, 134 injured, 6 were suicide blasts. They happened in 11 countries. And just today, or just yesterday, 7 were killed by a suicide bomber. That's not in these other statistics. So you get an update of what's going on a weekly basis on thereligionofpeace.com. Okay, and then get your educational piece over Randall Terry's site, What Would Muhammad Do? Okay, and that's going to come into play later with what we have to show towards the end of the show. We have video of a hearing today in the Senate where one of the parents was speaking about the solution to gun shooting in schools. And we're going to watch that video because it's fascinating. I think this guy is right on. And you have to have a right perspective in thinking about this. I think this guy does. So we're going to watch him and then talk about that. But before we do that, I want to bring up an interesting thing. Right here in Minnesota, there's a huge attack on the First Amendment and free speech and freedom of the press and freedom of assembly. And it's happening in Dakota County, and it's happening with DeDe Evavold. A warrant was issued. It's dated, it's filed March 12th. And I got the copy off the internet of the arrest warrant, okay? And it says, I mean, this is how sloppy these things get, okay? The above title came before the Honorable Judge's District Court on a certain date. There's no date filled in, okay? Based on the affidavit of noncompliance and request for arrest warrant, okay, on behalf of the above-named petitioner, which was David Ruckey and Samantha Ruckey. Now the judge here is Kathleen Guerin of Ramsey County, who's now a senior judge, so she's not elected. Judge Canning was supposed to have the case, but he was busy for some reason, so it came to Kathleen Guerin. So these senior judges are kind of circuit judges anywhere in the state. And so there's little accountability for them, if any, that could be had. So anyway, here it says she saw evidence, well, based on the affidavit of noncompliance and request for arrest warrant submitted on behalf of the above-named petitioners and the counsel record, Lisa M. Elliott, who got Attorney of the Year for this Ruckey case, which I think will blow up in her face down the road because of all the corruption and bad legal things going on in the court in Dakota County. It's just my opinion here. But what's happened is when you get a harassment restraining order filed against you, you got to have a hearing within 14 days. And they have to present their evidence, and they have to, and you get to provide a defense. Now what happens, and what's happening in our courtrooms today, is the other side, the side accusing, is not giving evidence. And so all that, in the harassment restraining order, all that they did was said, well, she has these blogs out there, and these blogs violate, are harassing, yet they showed no evidence of what was harassing. So Judge Canning just signs this order and says, you know, take down this certain blog, you know, that remove his address. And then, you know, it's a pretty vague order. And it seems overly broad. You can't tell, does the whole website need to go down, which covers a lot of issues, not just the Cresini, the Rucky family and the court case, and DeDe Evavold's perspective and other people's perspective on the court case. Does the whole thing go down, or just DeDe Evavold? Well, she was the only one on the harassment restraining order, so what about other people's right to press and freedom of the press and freedom of speech? And it gets all lumped up in this order. And so DeDe's asking for a hearing. DeDe's asking for the evidence, and the other side isn't giving it to her. Okay, then that's the same thing that happened in her trial. They refused to give her all the evidence that they had, all the searching and the research, because DeDe having an affirmative defense, and you have the girls saying that were kidnapped, according to the court. Well, the official term is denying custody of a parent, assisting in a runaway, and hiding custody from a parent who has, or from a person who has custodial powers. So they refused to give her the interviews of the girls when they were found and were talked to by the Dakota County, by Lakeville Police, the sheriffs, the Dakota County sheriffs, the St. Cloud sheriffs, the U.S. Marshals. There's a lot of evidence that wasn't given, and DeDe's saying, I need my evidence, you need to give it to me. And the court refused to order the other side to give that evidence, and then refused to allow her to put on an affirmative defense. And then you get this, then you get, once she's convicted, which you have a right to take custody of any child away from somebody who's being abusive. Anybody could do that, okay? And you get this affirmative defense. I did it because I witnessed abuse. This person was hitting these girls, these kids were saying their parents. So that's how school teachers can do it. That's how the county social workers can do it. That's the law that allows anybody to do it, and you can do it when the government's abusive. You get to take custody away from a parent, and then you get it worked out, okay? Well, that's what was going on here, and the girls were protected all these years from an alleged abusive father, okay? But we can't provide any of that evidence of abuse. We won't allow that to happen, okay? That's what was going on there. So when the conviction came, here we get this order that says, no social media. Can't talk about the case. Well, this wasn't social media. This was media. This was the press. This was acting as the press, getting information out, the right to speak about your case and defend yourself in the public. You get to do that, okay? And so the harassment restraining order came saying, hey, you know, you don't get to publish anymore. So all of a sudden they come before Judge Guerin with an emergency order for protection, saying that we need an ex parte order. And listen, the ex parte order was issued July 18th, 2017. July 18th, that's almost 3 months from now, 4 months. So here we're gone 2/3 of a year without an evidentiary hearing on the ex parte order. You're supposed to get it in 14 days. It's been asked for. DeDe's been saying, I'm not getting my speedy trial. And the judge just keeps continuing it. This is the game that goes on in Minnesota courts. So there was no specific allegations. All that was there was saying, hey, there's these posts talking about David Rucky and talking about the family. Well, okay. So ex parte order, you don't get to be there to defend yourself. And then on August 17th, which was longer than the 14 days, there was an affidavit that respondent violated the ex parte order. Okay, well, where's the hearing? It wasn't until August 24th that the respondent filed a notice of objection and a motion to vacate HRO notice to attorney and send it to the Attorney General for the unconstitutionality of the statute 609.748 as it was written and as applied, because there's criminal consequences with no evidence of a crime being committed. So you got no evidence of a crime being committed, yet you can be put in jail for it and you don't get a hearing or a trial. Okay, and your liberties are taken away and they don't even give you a jury trial. So it was a month later in September, it was really fascinating, is Canning accepted a motion, a petitioner for continuance. Okay, so the petitioner asked for a continuance. Well, wait a second, the defendant has the right to have this hearing. They were asking for it. And a month, 2 months later, well, December 13th, almost 3 months later, a petitioner requests a continuance again. The respondent objected again, and asked that the HRO be dismissed, and the continuance was denied, and there was a hearing. But then at the hearing, so you're making all the parties show up, which they didn't, and at the hearing, the judge issues a continuance. See, and so the counties, what they're doing, and the judges of what they're doing, is they're beating you up if you defend yourself, and they're making you come in 5, 6, 7 times, and they're defending the state in their laziness and their inability to bring a case forward, while you are getting your constitutional rights denied for a speedy trial. Okay, well, at the hearing, then, that was given a continuance, petitioner was ordered to not post private home addresses. But the home address that was supposedly published was a business address, but that had been taken down the day before. And that's the ex parte HRO that was pushed. That was the one that DeDe had to defend herself against. So on 1/14, so almost a month later, Judge Canning issued that order, well, wrote the order to remove the post. But then he didn't publish it, he didn't file it till January 9th. Okay, that would be 3 weeks later than when he told and gave the order. But at that time, the post was removed. Okay, so now you have this HRO out there. Another restraining order was rescheduled. The hearing was rescheduled for March 14th. Now, I was in that courtroom when it was rescheduled to the 14th. And the county and everybody was great with that. But then Dakota County said later on, in no notice to the other party, said it was scheduled in error, and then the schedule was rescheduled to May 16th. So where's your speedy trial? It's not there. And so instead of these harassment restraining orders getting dealt with, they get pushed back and back. In the meantime, the unclarity of the court orders were really, really vague, and a person is left, what do? I have my freedom to write and freedom of the press. So that's when the petitioner came in again with a ex parte emergency restraining order saying Judge Canning's order hadn't been complied with, and at that time they came up with a list of 20 blogs that needed to be, posts that needed to be removed. And before Kathleen Guerin said, you got 10 days to remove these 20 posts, and if you don't do it in that 10 days, you will be reported to jail in 30 days. In jail for 30 days for contempt of court. Well, she shows DeDe, from what I understand, removed all those 20 posts. So Lisa Elliott shows up with another, at the 10 days saying, well, here's 10 more posts that DeDe didn't remove. And see, there was no findings that these posts were harassment anywhere in this process. There was nothing to show that was harassing or met that definition. So, now you get the warrant for her arrest based on absolutely nothing. Now, so they're going to go through all this process. She gets denied her due process and all this. She's going to spend 30 days in jail. And, what posts, this is a moving target at what posts need to be removed. So, boy, if there's any First Amendment lawyers out there and freedom of the press lawyers, this is a big case. This will go places. And will deal with a lot of the legal issues for these quasi-judicial, quasi-criminal. So for a civil thing, you get thrown in jail and you don't have the protection of a jury trial. Fascinating story, to say the least. So that's where it is today. Evidently, DeDe's gone someplace, and who knows. But then again, the warrant hasn't been issued yet. The judge issued a warrant, but the sheriff decides whether to issue it or not, and to fulfill that. And as of today, the sheriff has not finalized that warrant. Otherwise, there'd be a red W next to her legal filings. Now, it's also interesting, and I can't stand this, I don't know what Dakota County's doing, but you can go up on the internet under Minces and look up these cases. You got to know how to do it. You can look it up. It's not showing up. So I called the state law library and asked them, well, hey, where is this? Well, it shows up here. And then you go to any, excuse me, got a pretty good tickle going on in my throat. If you go to a courthouse, you can find the case, but there is nothing that shows up. You sitting at your home. The case doesn't even show up, and it's supposed to, which is just as bogus as, now you can't look up the court documents, you can't read what they say, but you should be able to find them. And get the timeline and the history of what's going on. Well, I went down to the state library, and there, it popped up, and you can read the documents and stuff like that. And believe me, folks, the justices, the judges, excuse me, not the justices, those are the Supreme Court people, they're making a mockery of our Constitution. And they don't care. And DeDe say, I'm not here, I'm not going to testify myself, I take the fifth. The judge keeps asking her questions. Hey, fifth. Judge keeps asking her questions. Well, you have the right to take the fifth. You sure you want to do it? She's just said it 3 times. Said it 4 times. And they keep questioning her. Well, if you take the fifth, I'm going to hold you in contempt. Well, there's been no foundation laid on this case. There's been no testifying. The only person that the judge was trying to get to testify was DeDe Evavold. But it's up to the other side to lay the foundation as to what the evidence is that shows that she violated the restraining order, and they didn't show any. And that's what these senior judges, in my opinion, are for. The senior judges are to do the corrupt work for the elected judges, because then it doesn't show up on the elected judge's record. And how do you get rid of a senior judge? You can't unelect them. So they got this permanent position of senior judge. And it's just outrageous. And guess who established that position? The judiciary, not the legislature. Okay. Let's go to the first video. And I just want to show you what's taking place in our high schools in Minnesota. This happened at Southwest High School. Turn the volume down, a lot of swearing going on. But here, you know, a couple guys are being set up for a fight. The guy in the gray coat here and the gray t-shirt. And see, they're being set up and encouraged to fight each other. This is your Southwest High School. Now this is in the cafeteria, as you can tell, with the seats. And then there's other people joining in and being pushed off, and now somebody else comes in and they're fighting. So this is a brawl in our high school. See a teacher around? This is the cafeteria. All these people are standing around. There's not an adult in the area. And eventually at the end of the video, you'll see here that somebody comes in and you see an adult, I think in red, not that it'll be coming towards the end here, calmly walking in, and then it's a woman. You know, that's the only one you see there. We'll see it coming. But I bring this up, there she is, she was in orange. You can just see her briefly. The fight kind of broke itself up. This, we got the wrong video up there. It was allowed by permission to show this to anybody, and it was done by, I'm going to say Zonocor. But they gave permission to anybody to show that to anybody. Here's the deal, and here's what's going on in our schools. And this is something that this Ryan will bring up, Mr. Ryan, that's his first name, that the schools have developed a policy, and the St. Paul Public Schools have done this, that we can't discipline kids, we can't kick them out of school, we can't, because that hurts them. And so you get this type of behavior in school, and kids are getting hurt, and kids are being bullied, and the school keeps these bullies without disciplining them and getting them on a straight path and trying to help them out in constructive ways that will actually help them out. Instead, we're going to put you right back in with the people you're bullying, you know, so you continue your progress. So that's an issue. But I forget the guy's last name. But his first name is Ryan, I believe. Could have been his last name. We'll find out here. He was very vocal, and this is a Senate testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he had very strong things to say. We're going to watch what he said, and then we'll come back and make comments. So let's see.
Great, Mr. Chairman. Madam Ranking Member and the committee members, thank you for having me here today. I'd like to share a quick statement from the families, and then I'll begin my personal statement. The families of the amazing children and teachers killed at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School on Valentine's Day would like to recognize the first responders who were witnesses that day to an unspeakable evil. Many acted heroically, putting themselves in harm's way, and saved many lives that day. Thank you. To the caring and gracious people of the cities of Parkland, Coral Springs, the citizens of our home state of Florida, and those across America who have shown support for us in our time of sorrow and loss, we can only say thank you. Please know that your kindness and support is deeply appreciated and has made a lasting impact on our lives. As families, we came from different backgrounds and we hold a variety of viewpoints. Yet we united around this simple idea: our children and teachers should be safe at school. We rallied to the battle cry, "This time must be different." We came together to build on common ground, and we made history in Florida by passing legislation to achieve a first step in just 3 weeks. It was a good start, but it is not enough. There's much more to be done. Now to my personal statement. In a season of loss, it is difficult to find meaning in tragedy. The senseless murder of so many, including my own beloved daughter, Elena, tests the limits of faith and demands more endurance than we thought possible. It is a test abruptly forced on us, and we bear it the best we can. Each of us, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, wives of those lost and loved, strive to find that meaning. I believe we will be seeking it to the end of our days. However, our abiding faith tells us that our Father in heaven has a plan. Although the loss of our daughter Elena was to us unforeseen, it was not a surprise to him. This gives us comfort during this difficult time. We will not know what this all means until that time, but we know that this thing that has happened does not mean what this does not mean. It does not mean evil will triumph. It does not mean we may do nothing. It does not mean we should turn against one another. We must not struggle over ashes in the shadow of our grief. So instead of the media-fed, activist-inflamed, and politically aggravated din of the past month, I speak today about the real and substantive legislative and policy achievements we made in the state of Florida, earned at an unimaginable cost. And I'll share a few ideas on how the United States Congress can emulate and expand upon those accomplishments. The steps taken by Governor Scott and enacted by the Florida legislature have little to do with opportunistic agitation launched in the wake of the Parkland killings. They serve no political agenda. But they do serve the people's agenda because they build on common ground. They are inclusive rather than divisive. Americans are deeply interested in safe schools, in caring communities, and in secure neighborhoods. As family of one of the victims, we've learned at great personal cost that Americans can come together. Policy and political action ought to take their cues from this American majority. We do not have to all agree on guns, and we won't. But we can agree on the most fundamental things. We can agree that students and teachers should be safe. We can agree that schools should be secure. We can agree that law enforcement should be competent and must do its job. I want to focus on that briefly on that last point especially. Nicholas Cruz and the deadly danger he posed were the worst kept secrets in Parkland, with one inexcusable exception. He was kept a secret from many of the parents of the students of Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. Yet every relevant authority knew he was deeply troubled with the potential for lethal violence. The foster system knew it, the FBI knew it, the school district knew it, and the Broward County Sheriff's Department knew it. Yet despite the fact that each of these agencies were fully authorized and empowered to take action well before tragedy struck, not one of them fulfilled their duty. The testament of their failure is 17 dead children and teachers, 17 more with life-altering injuries, a burden we must bear forever. Add to this failure the failure to warn the parents of the students. By this action or inaction, we were rendered powerless to fulfill our most sacred trust as parents, to protect our children. Forgive me then if I do not believe government is the ultimate solution. Our trust in our institutions and our office holders is deeply shaken. Our broken hearts cry out every moment of every day for the rest of our lives. So what is the solution? The legislation passed in Florida is a good start, and there must be more done to secure our schools. Legislation being considered in this body will continue on the efforts begun in Florida, and I call on Congress to pass this legislation. Follow the lead of what has been accomplished in Florida. Build on common ground. But it is not the whole solution. The problem of man against evil is as old as humanity itself, and we cannot face it alone. If we think of school violence as a disease, we would not just treat the symptoms or only don protective gear to avoid accidental exposure. We must learn to identify these troubled youth before they turn violent and get them the help they desperately need. We can look to programs like the Safe UT program in Utah or the work being done by the LA County schools to identify potential threats. As we heard earlier, even the U.S. Secret Service has studied school shooters and defined 6 common characteristics which can aid in identification and interdiction. Identification and interdiction has become my mission. Not one that I ever wanted, but one I accept in Elena's name. And I will see it through. Ultimately, the solution is not in any single policy, not in any piece of legislation, and not in any activist fervent prescription. It is in our hearts. We can try to stop the next Nicholas Cruz with better screening, with competent law enforcement, and with better security. Sometimes we will succeed, but sometimes those measures alone will fail. Where we really need to stop the next killer is in our homes, in our communities, and through our faith. The best defense against the next Nicholas Cruz is in building up strong families where love can be shown to a hurting child. It is in the care we show to a struggling or overwhelmed neighbor. It is in the charity we extend to a stranger. It is in the comfort we give a wounded heart. It is in the kindness we show to an isolated, struggling young man. It is in the reflection of God that we have in ourselves. That isn't within the power of this Congress or any body of men to give or command, but it is within each of us. Until we as a society understand that, our efforts will continue to fall short. It is my hope that senseless tragic events like the one that took my dear daughter will awaken people across our nation that we need to work collectively to create a significant cultural shift. I hope we do. If we do, it will be the part of us that is most like Elena. Thank you.
Wow. That video needs to be played over and over and over again, and everybody needs to see that. There's some profound lines. We're going to go through this video, but in case we run out of time, I'm going to hit some of the points here. He was talking about the competency of government, of the police, that needed to be addressed. You know, the way he said it was eloquent. It's the worst kept secret. Everybody knew except the parents. The parents are kept in the dark. This is intentional. You know, there's a risk out there, but we can't tell the parents because it might cause us to lose students. You know, so the FBI knew, the foster parents knew, school district knew, Broward County knew, the sheriff's department knew. All these people knew and had power to do something, and they didn't do it. And these 17 dead people, humans, are testimony to the failure of government. And then, you know, he says, forgive me if I don't believe government is the solution. Look at how many layers of government were in on that. And they knew about it, and they did nothing. I remember listening to his 911 calls. My mom died just a while ago. I'm a mess. My brother's beating me up. I need help, you know, and nothing happened. So it is, and this man says he's a person of faith, and he definitely was talking about the sovereignty of God here, but we have a dilemma. You know, as Christians, we're called to lay our lives down. Of course, Muhammad says, kill people, kill the unbeliever, kill the apostate. The Christian says, Jesus says, lay it down. I got your future covered. You know, you'll be with me. That's, you know, you'll be with Jesus. You're covered. You know, what's here on this earth is nowhere near as valuable as he is, as Jesus is. So lay down your life. But then at the same time, you have a calling as a parent is to protect your children and to protect your family as a man. Yet here's the state taking away, saying, we got this covered. You can't protect without us. And then failure after failure after failure. And matter of fact, we're going to take away your right to how your kids are educated and where you go for that education. Trust us. You know, we know better for you. You don't, as a parent, have the ability to make that decision. So school choice becomes a huge issue in all of this. How many parents do you think wanted to send their kids to this high school? How many would take their kid, and any high school, it's any, you can just ask that about any high school now, Southwest High School, you know. I mean, there's a culture of secularism, a culture of atheism at these schools. And if you're a person of religious faith, you really don't want to have your kids go there, but you don't have choice because maybe you're too poor. And this is what was observed in the founding of our country, is that, and George Washington himself, this Constitution is wholly inadequate for a people that doesn't have a religious faith. Of course, he was referring to the Christian faith, not the Muslim faith, because Muslim faith, you know, kill whoever you want, except for a Muslim that's not an apostate. So the Constitution is meaningless for people that lack any values, that lack any respect for life. And you as a parent, how do I protect my kid? I can't. The state's forcing me to a position where I can't protect my children. So what we didn't hear in this testimony was, okay, how do you build up safe schools? Yeah, evidently you like Florida's solution. I haven't looked into that. He mentioned the Secret Service 6 characteristics. Well, when I first heard it, I thought FBI, so I looked for that report online, found a threat assessment perspective. Didn't see any date on it, but it was signed by Janet Reno, so that kind of dates it a little bit. So it disqualifies it. Yeah, Ruby Ridge and Waco. Although if you've seen the documentary on Waco, Koresh was a bad man. So child rape and everything, and the Secret Service knew that going in, and they had the testimony, and they, you know, they had the video. So, but they didn't let the public know, but they still handled it wrong. You know, instead of having all those kids killed, they could have had more patience, and they needed to have more patience. So, but anyway, the Secret Service has this report. So I haven't looked into what Florida's answers are yet that he thinks are a good start, but he said government's not the solution. And each one of us has to look into ourselves. And I think if you look into yourself, you're not going to find something good. You have to look outside yourself to something greater than yourself. And you have to look to something that has a greater power to deliver you from yourself. And to me, that's Jesus Christ, his example, his life. I lay it down, you know. I don't take life, I lay my life down. That's what he said. And who thought being equal to God was nothing to grasp at. He was God. Therefore, he endured, because of the joy set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame of the cross. He endured it because there was greater joy at the other end of the cross, and that was to redeem the people. And, you know, the Bible's very clear. Everybody's got a heart of stone. We don't see God. We don't get it. We rebel. We're in that beginning state of rebellion. This is the natural state of man. That's why we need redemption. And so God redeeming us, we then could reach out, and just a reminder for all of us to reach out and help people that, for whatever your faith, that are hurting or lonely or need encouragement, because they're human. They're created by God, but may not understand how to be a child of God. And so you love on people as best you can. And the human love isn't going to be perfect. Well, again, this was Ryan Petty speaking before the Judicial Committee in the Senate, and I encourage you all, that was on C-SPAN. I'll try to get a copy of this. You can clip and edit it and get it on the internet so you can watch it by itself, find it easily. But most profound thing I've heard from the Senate in quite a while. Okay, remember, if you don't stand up for other people's liberties, who's going to stand up for yours? And good men don't do nothing. God bless. Have a great week.